Today, I'm on the trams again, and I'm going right to the end of the line, to Elmer's End. Who was Elmer, and why did his end need commemorating in this fashion? Elmer's End is an area of southeast London. It's one of those odd places that didn't really exist until they built a station here. The name is likely derived from the Aylmer family, who owned land in the area in the 13th century. Back then, of course, this would have been countryside, presumably ideal for hunting wabbits. Historical spelling tends to be fairly inconsistent, so it wasn't long before the name Elmer's End started appearing on maps. By the 19th century, it was often known simply as Elm End or Elm End Green. When the South Eastern Railway built their station in 1864, they returned to the older name. Funnily enough, one of the sources I went to for this, London's Local Railways by Alan A. Jackson, complains that the name is unnecessarily American. While Mr. Jackson is a fine author, he doesn't seem to be aware that Elmer's End not only predates the railway, but also the colonising of America itself. I've talked about the history of the line through here in a couple of recent videos, so apologies for repeating myself here. The line was a branch off the Mid-Kent Railway from Beckenham. The original idea was that this would run all the way to Redhill, which would allow the South Eastern Railway to break the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway's monopoly in Croydon, and hopefully give the South Eastern access to Brighton. That didn't quite work out, and so the railway went no further than Addiscombe. This was not an ideal situation for the South Eastern Railway, who now found themselves with a railway line that mostly served villages and hamlets. They tried to make the best of it. In 1882 they took over a newly built branch line to Hayes, and so Elmer's End became a junction station. That line was originally built as an independent line called the West Wickham and Hayes Railway, but the intention from the start was that the larger company would run it. It was a pretty common way of getting your town on the railway map: form a company, build a line, get taken over. In preparation for the new branch, Elmer's End was rebuilt. In 1885 another branch opened, this one from Woodside to South Croydon. Ironically, this was jointly run by the South Eastern Railway and their former rivals, the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway. Of course, the railway brought development. There was a fair bit of industry, including a sewage farm and a refuse destructor, the sort of things you don't want in town if you can avoid it. This rather limited the town's growth to the east of the station, at least in the beginning, although the frequent train service to Charing Cross and Cannon Street meant that there was plenty of development to the west, as central London workers moved out here, drawn by the convenience. In 1923, the South Eastern Railway was taken over by the Southern Railway. For complicated reasons, the South Eastern Railway only nominally existed by this point, having become part of the South Eastern and Chatham Railway in 1899, but that's a whole other story. The Southern Railway took over most of the major railway companies based in the south of England, which of course included the many branch lines of South London. They carried out a programme of electrification, creating a cleaner, faster and more cost-effective service, with this line getting the juice in 1926. Electrification made many of the places the Southern served that much more attractive to commuters. Elmer's End is no exception. You can see that many of the houses here date from between the wars. By 1939, the service through Elmer's End was intensive. In fact, the staff in the signal box here complained about the amount of work they had, arguing that it was unsafe. From the Second World War onwards, the situation with the line through Elmer's End got flipped, turned upside down, and I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. I'll tell you exactly what happened to the rails through Elmer. The Addiscombe branch suffered a loss with the end-of-through services to Charing Cross. No, sorry, this just isn't working. During the Second World War, the through service from Addiscombe to Charing Cross and Cannon Street was reduced to a shuttle between Addiscombe and Elmer's End. And though the service was briefly restored under British Railways, it was too late. The line had lost its passengers, and it would never regain them. Meanwhile, the branch to Hayes, the afterthought, was doing fine. In fact, in 1957, 10-coach trains were brought in, and the platforms at Elmer's End were extended accordingly. In 1963, the goods sidings closed. And in 1973, the old station building was destroyed by fire. I really hate to say it, but the current station building is one of the least inspiring stations I've ever seen. And in 1983 the very unpopular and very underused Woodside and South Croydon line was closed. In the 1990s, work began on a new rail system for South London, the Croydon tram link. This would improve connections in an underserved area of the London suburbs, but would also enable the revitalisation of underused railway lines by building new connections. The line from Elmers End was a prime candidate. The decision was made to build a line running through the streets of Croydon, connecting with the old Woodside and South Croydon line and taking over the whole shebang from Croydon to Elmers End. The spur to Addiscombe would be abandoned in 1997. It's now a park, in fact. Oddly enough, though, this wasn't meant to be the end of the line. The original plan was that the tram line would extend along here, down here, and terminate here, in the centre of Elmers End. This would potentially allow the line to be extended even further, but alas, it was not to be, and the line ends in the station. I have to say, I have a question about this version of the line. In order to get into Elmers End, the line would have to cross the main line. So how would that have worked? Would it have used the road bridge? That would involve a mighty tight curve, so I suspect it would have had to bypass the actual station to get a decent run-up. Or would they have built a flyover and had the tram platform on the other side of the station? Anyway, it's all immaterial because, of course, Elmers End is the terminus and has been since 2000. Incidentally, these days the tram link is known as London Trams, but Elmers End does still have some of the old signage. The tram, or the tram link if you prefer, uses the bay platform where the old shuttle services used to terminate. In some ways I think it's a shame. Given the success of the trams, I would have thought that the potential to extend would be a useful thing to have. On the other hand, as things stand, the station has cross-platform interchange, which is no bad thing, even if it is quite limited. In the 2010s, plans were made to expand the tram stop with the addition of a second platform, which would increase the capacity of the line as a whole. This was supposed to happen between 2018 and 2020, but as of 2023, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot happening. It's even possible that it could end up on the underground. Various plans to extend the Bakerloo line to the southeast have involved the possibility of taking over the Hayes branch, in which case we'd see tube roundels at Elmers End. But this, if it were to happen, would not be for a long time yet. So, that is the tale of Elmers End. It's an unusual story. From a small station serving nothing much, to a junction, to a suburban commuter station, to tram terminus and interchange. And as for the future, well, maybe it'll continue as it is, or maybe there are yet more changes to come. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please do leave a like and subscribe for more, if that's what you're into. I'd like to thank my donors on Ko-fi and Patreon for your always generous support. You are the junction to my branch line. And I'll see you all again very soon. Cheerio.